everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of The Rose Show. I am your host with the most, Jay. Of course, who else but me? Welcome. First and foremost, before we get going, I just have to say thank you guys so much for helping me crush all expectations for episode number 1. In 8 hours, it actually doubled what the pregame show did. And I was hoping for like 200 views by the end of week 1. And as of right now, as of this recording, it's almost going to break 600 just on YouTube alone. That's not even including the audio only stream. So thank you guys very much for making my launch episode pretty special. Like I said, it blew all expectations out of the water, and I couldn't have done that without you guys enjoying it and leaving all the comments that you did, showing how much you guys enjoyed the episode. So thank you. Please continue to let me know what you do like, what you don't like about the show, because I want to continuously improve. No feedback, whether it's positive or negative, in my opinion, is a bad thing. So like I said, I just want to keep improving on this show. So thank you guys so much for helping me achieve that. So, like I kind of alluded to last week, this is just going to be the portion of the show where I just kind of let loose. So here we go. A couple of thoughts for over the last week. I went and saw the movie The Iron Claw last night. For those that don't know anything about it or don't know what the movie's about, it's about the Von Erich family, famous wrestling family out of Dallas. I absolutely thought the movie was incredible. As somebody who knows a lot about wrestling history as myself, they took some liberties throughout the movie, changed some things, and throughout the whole time, it's funny. My wife is sitting next to me, and the whole time I see something, I'm just like, oh, it's not how it happened. But, it's a movie. It is what it is. I'm not complaining about it at all. It was still great. I highly recommend you go and see it. If you're a wrestling fan in the slightest, you'll really enjoy it. However, prepare yourself, because it's one of the saddest stories in all of not only wrestling, but in fandom in general. So prepare yourself going in there for that. No spoilers or anything like that. And real quickly, now that I'm thinking about it, when did movie theaters? This is my first time being in a movie theater in like a year. I think the last time I went and saw a movie, it was Black Adam. So that tells you how long ago it was. I don't go to the movies very often. Not too much that comes out these days really intrigues me a whole lot. But of course, being a wrestling fan, I had to go see the Iron Claw. When did movie theaters become mini home theaters? We walked in, it was a Cinemark in Beaver Creek, Ohio. It was only like 6 aisles in the entire theater. I'm exaggerating a little bit, under exaggerating. But there wasn't very many aisles in there. And every single aisle, it was like every chair was its own couch. And it's funny. And the people, yeah, there were people next to us, but even so, there's so much distance in between both of us. It didn't matter. We had our own fold out table in the arm. It was crazy. Hey, smart for them for doing stuff like that. I don't know if the entire theater was set up that way or it was just certain theaters in the actual building that were set up that way. I don't know, but it was crazy. I've never seen that before. And my wife was, all excited about the heated seats that, there's a button on the side, you can press it and then there's heated seats. And my first thought was, I'm not turning that shit on. Why would I want to warm my butt and have the butt sweat of somebody else crawl up through my jeans? No, I'm good on all that. Heated seats in me, unless if it's, in our car, I'm good. I don't, like I said, other people's sweat is just kind of a germaphobe when it comes to shit like that. But still, it was comfortable as hell. Anyway, that's besides the point. Didn't expect to go on a rant about butt sweat and heated seats. But regardless, go see that movie if you get a chance. It was really good. Another thing that happened this week, a couple days ago, Cat Williams interview. I watched it the day it came out, and I gotta say, here's the only thing I'm going to say about this. And I'm not going to get political because, again, that's something that I want to avoid completely when it comes to this show. I don't believe in politics, so I'm not going to waste your time with it. However, I do want to say this. Once upon a time, I took on the city of Piqua because they were screwing me over on utilities, I felt, and I went after them. I was made to be looked out to be a crazy person, basically, and everybody just considered me a conspiracy theorist. I tried to warn people that there was a rich cabal of wealthy business owners in this area. They said I was insane. I told everyone utility prices were steadily rising. They said I was a paranoid freak. I told everybody that there was one business owner in general in this town who was intentionally keeping everybody out so we could continue to tank the entire city and gentrify it into whatever he wanted it to be. People said I was a madman. All three of those things ended up becoming, with proof, true. And that wasn't so crazy anymore. I want to say the same thing to you when it comes to the Cat Williams thing, if you haven't done any research on it yet. Pretty much everything that he says can be somewhat backed up with some proof, you know. I'm not going to sit here and get into I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if, you know, what he says specifically is true, but even when it comes to like the Cedric the Entertainer thing, there's proof of that. The thing about the comedians in the dresses, go ahead and take a look at everybody he calls out. At least one of them is in a dress. I'm not saying that, you know, right or wrong, whatever. Do what you got to do to make yourself, you know, the best person you can be, I guess. But I don't know. All I'm saying is sometimes the crazy person isn't so fucking crazy. That's all I really got to say about that. However, let's talk about today's episode. I have a good one today with Devon Dudley. I do kind of want to give you a little warning before we get going here. He had a little bit of connection issues within the first 10 minutes or so of the interview, but we do eventually pan that out. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're obviously listening on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any of the multiple platforms that have picked us up since the first release, which there have been multiples. You're obviously not going to worry about this too much because you don't have the video aspect of it. But if you're watching on YouTube, just power through the first 10 minutes. I know some people are bothered by glitches. I am myself as well. But hey, it's the nature of the beast when you're recording these things live, right? But like I said, it's only the first 10 minutes. Power through. And it's a really good interview. Man, it was hard to get through this one and not fanboy out. I'm not going to lie, but it was a really good show. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. But before we do, as always, a word from our sponsors. All right, everybody, it's time to stop and let you know about today's sponsor of the show, Crazy Martin's in Piqua, Ohio, one of my favorite places in the entire world to go to. Crazy Martin's has provided their customers with quality products for over 20 years, from ashtrays to water pipes and everything in between. Stop in, check out their selection, and of course, check out their pinball machines. With over 20 pins to choose from, there is something for everyone. Crazy since 1996. I don't just say this about every place. I love going to Crazy Martin's. I've always loved going to Crazy Martin's ever since I was of age to go to Crazy Martin's. It's one of my favorite places in the entire world. Me and my wife go there almost every Sunday to play pinball machines. It is one of the funnest spots in Ohio you could possibly find. It is in Piqua, Ohio. Check out their website at www.crazymartins.com. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Roast Show. As always, I am your host, Jay, and today, oh man, am I excited. I have one half of the greatest tag team of all time. He's an ECW original, a 24-time World Tag Team Champion, of course, a Hall of Famer. And he's also the reason why I can't hear the word testify when I go to church without laughing. It's Devon Dudley. What's going on, my man?
I'm good, man. I wouldn't tell the Lord that. Don't tell the Lord you can't hear the word.
That's awesome. Hey, we'll keep it between us. We'll keep it between us. But let's go ahead and jump into it, my man. I'm very curious about quite a bit. Tell us a little bit about your background and as you were growing up, how did you get into professional wrestling?
Well, I started watching wrestling back in 1977. I was about 6, maybe even 7 years old. I was my parents and my grandmother were out and took me along with them to a friend's house, and I happened to turn the TV on while the adults were being adults and playing cards and talking and all of that. I was in the room, I flipped through the channels and wrestling came on, WWF. And I was fascinated by it. And I remember when it was time to leave, my grandmother came in and said, all right, we're leaving, let's go. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Because I was watching Bob Backlund do an interview and Big John Studd. And, Big John Studd was saying how he was going to, beat Backlund every inch of his life in the ring when he get him in Madison Square Garden, the whole nine. And I was petrified for Backlund. I remember telling my grandmother, hey, this little man's gonna get his butt kicked, by this giant. And she looked at me and looked at the TV. She goes, "Oh boy, that's wrestling. Leave that fake stuff alone." Well, those words came back to haunt her later because I think it was back in 83, 84. I remember during the whole Hulkamania era. And when Piper and them came in, my grandmother was just as glued to the TV set as I was, watching the whole Hulkamania birth and all of the stars that Vince brought in at that time. So it was a very magical moment for me growing up in Brooklyn, New York, in the projects. A lot of stuff was going on, but crime and all of that. But, I was glued to the TV set every week waiting for WWF to come on TV and to see what was going to happen next. So, and I was a huge Hulkamaniac. So, it was a time in my life that I hold very dear because it was a time when, not too much was going on, but people getting killed or selling drugs, all of that, where I came from. But meanwhile, professional wrestling saved me. It was professional wrestling that made me not want to go out there and do that. So when Hogan said, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, and train, that's what I did. I was praying and, doing my little push-ups. I was doing 10 push-ups and I thought that was training, out of breath. And, I was having a good time watching the whole rock and wrestling connection during that time. Cyndi Lauper, Lou Albano, Roddy Piper, the whole nine. I had a good time, man. I really, really did. I really enjoyed myself back then.
Yeah, awesome. How did you how did you end up and we're fast forward a little bit from, where we just left off to when you actually start training, but you got an opportunity to train with the legendary Johnny Rods. How exactly did that come about? Was that a difficult process to start, or did you find it
No.
fairly simple to kind of get in?
Well, back then you really didn't know how to get into professional wrestling, or nobody knew anybody who was a professional wrestler back then because the business was still sacred. The business was still, hush hush. Nobody talked about how to do that stuff. And I called a radio show in New York at the time. It came on at 2 a.m. in the morning, 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. in the morning, and it was WFAN, the fan. Jody Mack was the host of the show, and he brought in a guy named Rich Mancuso, and they used to do this wrestling talk show. I mean, today we call them podcasts, but that was the only thing we had back then. And this was like the week of WrestleMania 4, Trump Plaza. And I called in. I was lucky to get in, and I was allowed to ask 3 questions. One of them was professional wrestling, fake or real. The rumor that went around during that time was Mr. Wonderful dead, because there was a bad rumor back in the 80s about Mr. Wonderful passing very early. And then, of course, how do you get into professional wrestling? And he told me, he said, listen, after the show, I'm going to take your number down, and, after the show, we'll give you a buzz and we'll talk more. So after the show was over, they called me, and Rich Mancuso was supposed to meet me down at Gleason's gym where Johnny trained. And I remember, and I was in 11th grade at the time. I didn't have a car, no license, no nothing. Nobody was taking me anywhere. I lived in Long Island at the time because my mother got remarried and we moved out of Brooklyn. And I just remember telling the guy, yeah, I'll be down there. I'll meet you down there. Yeah, I'll be down there. And of course, I never showed up. And then I remember when I graduated, I was in my senior year, and I called Johnny because I remember Gleason's gym. So back then, you dialed the operator. They sent you to, whatever you were looking for. And I spoke to Johnny. Johnny said, listen, kid, graduate, then come see me. And I was like, all right. And that's exactly what I did. I graduated from New Rochelle High School in New York. And I basically did 1 year. I did it like a semester or 2 at Iona College. And I basically went into professional wrestling, started with Johnny Rods.
Awesome. And I'm a child of the 90s. Ours was the Ultimate Warrior was dead. It was really replaced. That was my era. And it's strange because it's always like there's one wrestler of each era where the rumor is they died and they were replaced. I don't understand what that's even all about or how that comes out. I guess with Warrior, I could kind of understand a little bit, because he did
Oh,
come
oh no,
back and his.
oh no, not even then. I mean, the Ultimate Warrior died. I mean, when people say things like that about people, are dead and this and that, they start these rumors. You don't realize how hurtful that can be unless
Sure.
it's done to you. Family members, family calling, what the heck is this I'm hearing about such and such? Did he pass away? I mean, people don't realize how, bad this stuff is when they do things like that. It just shows me how bad society is. And my grandparents were so right when they told me, you're going to regret. When you get older, you're going to regret because this generation is not good at all. You're going to regret, you know, our generation guiding you and learning the ropes because, you don't get it. We didn't do things like that back then, and they didn't do things like that. You didn't disrespect people that were older than you, and things like
Yeah.
that. This generation has no respect whatsoever. There's going to be some haters on me now for saying that, but it's the truth. Look at what we're going through. Look at the hatred that's going on. I even stopped going on Twitter. Put something on Twitter, and then if somebody doesn't like it, they start getting disrespectful about it. I'm like, dude, why? If you don't like it, just flip and go somewhere else. Why do you feel the need to voice your opinion on something that you're totally irrelevant to?
Yeah. I run a Facebook page. It's called Walmart, not Walmart, Walmart. It's just, a fun little meme page. Undoubtedly, it could be the funniest joke in the world referring to something wrestling related. Undoubtedly, there's a comment on there of somebody talking, just straight up shit. And it's just like, how this is a joke. We're supposed to be having fun, and without a doubt, and I totally understand exactly what you're saying, and I don't really care if it gets you hated or not. It's the truth. This generation has no respect, and
Um,
this is coming from somebody who grew up in again the '90s where shit was crazy, and I try not to look back in the same way that people look back on our generation where it's like, oh, these young kids. I'm sorry, but it's true. It's true in this generation. It's not an age gap. Just not an age gap. And there's people that I work with of age, that age demographic, and they're not prepared to face the real world. You can tell, they can't handle criticism. You try to give them instruction, they can't follow simple instruction. And yeah, you're absolutely right.
well, not only that, but even when I hear some of the comedians talk about how, Little Junior came in fifth place, but yet he gets an award. Anyway, for what? He didn't win. He wasn't number one. That's how you
Yes.
strive to be great.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. Everything you just said is absolutely accurate. I've never. You're setting these kids up for failure when you tell them when they fail they still win. It's not how the real world works. It's never been how the real world works. So why are we doing these? We are doing them a disservice by telling them, oh yeah, you lost, but you're still number one. Adversary is how getting knocked down is how you bring yourself up sometimes. I was bullied in high school quite a bit,
Well,
and that was. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say the thing about it is you got these Karens out there that get upset because little Pete didn't get the award and this and that. Dude, when I grew up, if you didn't get number one, then you came back the next time the tournament started, but you practiced and you did whatever you had to do to get better. So therefore, you had a fair chance to be number one. You know,
Yes.
that's the thing. But again, you got the Karens out there that get upset. Well, my son needs to do this and he needs to win. If not, he's going to be depressed. I don't know how I'm going to deal with it. Well, number one, someone should have whooped your ass when you was a kid too. Maybe good. Maybe you should have sex more often. Maybe when your husband is going to the freaking to the Christmas party, maybe you should tag along with them because there's another Karen taking care of business for him that you're not doing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And one more thing on this, because I wasn't planning on getting on this topic, but I'm fucking loving the fact that we are. One more thing on that. It's also the reason why I say it's the parents' fault because it is. But the reason why I say that is I used to date somebody before I got married about a decade ago, and we used to do the traveling soccer teams, and
Yeah.
the parents were ungodly, unruly. You screaming at the refs, the coaches screaming at the kids, like we are doing them a disservice by not acting properly in children's sports. I mean, I don't know how it is where you live, but I live in the Dayton, Ohio area. Dayton, Ohio has a problem in itself of finding referees because referees just don't want to deal with the parents. It's all the damn parents, you know?
Well, I live in a community in Florida. We call it the Desperate Housewives. It's the I don't know if you ever watched or know of the show Desperate Housewives and how that community was. That's pretty much where I am, and that's exactly how these moms are. And the dads, they're just as bad. They are, the yelling and the screaming at the referees. Okay, so if a bad call was called, then it was called. So what? It ain't the end of the world. It ain't like these kids are making money or is paying your mortgage or your light bill. What the hell are you screaming and getting agitated for about it? It's not a
Yeah,
big deal.
yeah,
Calling them
absolutely.
stupid or dumb or blind for what? For what reason? What
Yeah.
is? I don't get it, nor do I understand. I really don't. I think common sense was thrown out the window a long time ago with this generation. It really was, and it's half of my generation too, because they're the ones out there too. But still, it's just sad, man.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It has been thrown out the window. But speaking of throwing people through things, ECW. Let's go ahead and talk about how you got into the ECW. It, if you can stomach some of the first few episodes of ECW, I'm sure you could go back and watch the history. But I'd rather just go to the source. How did you end up making your way there?
I had some personal issues in my life when I was at this wrestling school, and I had took a break. I actually quit. Believe it or not, I had stopped, and I didn't want. I wasn't going to do it anymore. I was going to concentrate on my family and trying to get things in order with that. I was working at the post office at the time, and back then having a government job was a great thing. You had a government job, you were in, you were set, you would retire by the time you were 40. And so that's what my family and so many other people wanted me to do. It was to stay there. And I was like, nah, I got more on the table here. For some reason, I was like, no, I need to go back. So I wound up going back, and Johnny, I was busting my behind. I swear it seemed like it was like 2 months. And then Johnny was like, what the hell happened? You just came out of nowhere and started doing all this stuff. I was like, well, I'm ready. And he was like, oh, I see that. I'm good friends with Tommy Dreamer and Taz. As a matter of fact, I trained them. And Big Dick Dudley. I was like, oh yeah, I heard about you did that. Yeah, because I had met Tommy, prior to ECW when he used to come down to the school and work out with Mondo Clean and me. And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I heard about that. And he goes, yeah, that place ECW. And I went, oh boy. I was like, you mean the guys that hit people with barbed wire bats and thumbtacks and all of that? I was like, yeah, what about it? He was like, well, I was going to see if I can get you maybe a tryout. Maybe you can go over there. I was like, ugh. That was the time I had the conversation in my head that was like 5 hours long, but yet it was only like 33 to 4 seconds. Why I should not go to ECW. Something just came out of my mouth. I just went, okay, call him. And I was just like, and he made the phone call. He told Taz, he says, yeah, I got this kid named A Train, and he'll blow everybody up over there. He's that good of a shape, and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. So when he told me what he said, I said, why would you say that to that? To these, do you not see what these people do? And you're setting me up for the slaughter. Oh, you're gonna be fine. You just do what I taught you. I said, you didn't teach me how to swing a chair, nor did you teach me how to work with thumbtacks, chairs, tables, and ladders, and none of that. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I went down into the wrestling school. I remember telling Taz, I said, man, I'm so sorry about Johnny. I was like, I don't know why he told you I would blow up everybody and, whatever. He was like, oh, don't worry about that. I know how Johnny is. Don't worry about that. It's all good. I just went, phew. And, I got in the ring with Perry Saturn, and Taz was right there. You know, he had his arms crossed like he does on TV, and he's just watching. And he threw out some spots for me to do so he could see how I was in the ring. And I was in great shape. I mean, tremendous shape then. And I just remember when I was done, I'm bouncing around, ready to go. Perry Saturn was on one knee, and Taz goes, "So what do you think? How's the kid in the ring?" He goes, "The kid's got it. He's good. He's good." And I'm saying to myself, I just blew up Perry Saturn. I was like, "What the hell?" Now I'm sure if you asked Perry, he would deny it, but Taz remembers it. Dreamer came in the middle of it, and Bubba was watching. And it was one of those things where I was like very proud of that. But I was very nervous too because not everybody blows up Perry Saturn. And I just remember, you know, I was like, "Is there anything else you want me to do?" And Perry's like, "No, no, no, the kid's good. He's good. He's good." Taz's like, "You sure?" He goes, "Yeah, no, 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 the kid's good. He's good. I think he got it." And next thing you know, the phone call was made to Paul Heyman, and I became a Dudley.
It's so ironic. And this is why I love doing podcasts because you get little nuggets of information. And it's so ironic that you were so terrified of the weapon aspect of it. And then you went on to make tables legendary. I know some people want to credit Sabu with the, creation of the table spot or Public Enemy, one or the other. I don't really care who made it. The Dudleys perfected it. Did you guys go about incorporating tables into your routine to the point where it became a stable?
Well, we didn't. Sabu was the originator of that. And when we got to WWE, Vince wanted us to basically put Terry Reynolds through a table. And in his mind, he thought that that was going to make us a heel. And when we did it in Philadelphia. Now, if you know Philadelphia, it's Philadelphia. So they're not going to sit there and boo you putting a woman through a table. They're going to cheer you on and want to see it because they're going to want to
Yeah.
see her, they're going to want to see her get murdered. They're going to want to see her die. That's the way Philadelphia is. And they've always been like that. But it wound up turning us baby faces. And the next thing you know, we had the tables match with the Hardys and this and that. And because we were ECW, we were considered the extreme ones before the Hardys were Team Extreme. Um, they decided that maybe the table was the perfect fit for us to be recognized with. And from that point on, we started using tables, especially after the table match we did at Madison Square Garden, which was tremendous. And me and Matt was just talking about that on social media in an instant message privately. I can't begin to thank Matt and Jeff for everything that they've done for the Dudleys over the years, and I'm sure they feel the same way, vice versa. And I'm not leaving out Edge and Christian. We had a tremendous run. I don't think there was ever a tag team feud in the history of pro wrestling that went as long as we had. Excuse me, with each other. I mean, that was something to have all of those. To have all of those months, weeks, and years of going at it and never getting stale, never getting old. We were able to keep and captivate the fans' attention and continue to make history. And that's exactly what we did. I can't begin to tell you how much I love those guys. And I'm very grateful and I'm very humbled to say that we could not have done it without them. Just like I'm sure they could say we couldn't have done it. They could have done it without us. You know,
Yeah.
I will always be grateful for Matt and Jeff, Edge and Christian. I will always love them. I mean, hell, I named my third child after Matt. That's how much of a relationship we had with each other. And, to this day, me and Matt, when we talk, it's like, I love you, bro. I love you too. We never get off the phone or when we leave each other, we never stop saying we love each other because we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Even though, like I said, I do live in Dayton, and we'll revisit that here in a second. But I even though I was kind of in a hotbed area for ECW, my mom would have probably, I don't know, stuck as many shoes up my behind as she could have if she would have caught me watching ECW. So I never really got a chance to. So my introduction to you guys, even though I remember, the first Raw invasion and all that stuff, I watched that as a little kid. So that's kind of how I knew you was from just WWF. I knew you came from ECW, but I knew nothing about your material until later on in life. So my first introduction was again when you came to the WWF. So that rivalry there between all three groups, that's how I know you. Now again later I came back to the ECW stuff, especially when Rise and Fall, that DVD came out, which excellent. I really started getting into ECW more then. But having that as my introduction, again, I said it in the intro, makes me think you guys are the greatest tag team of all time, because without you guys, Edge and Christian were there, obviously, with the Hardys before. Adding you guys into the mix made that circle complete. And it was magic. It was absolutely magic for sure.
Well, I always like to say I don't consider us the greatest tag team of all time. I consider us the most decorated tag team of all time. But I
Sure.
feel safe to say that we are the greatest tag team of our era because there were so many other tag teams that came before us that were just great. They were
Yes.
box hits, they were box office smash. But during our time, during our era, yes, I will say we were the greatest tag team of our era. Just like I'm sure nowadays with these new tag teams, I think the Usos are the greatest tag team of their era right now. They were doing tremendous work before they split up. I enjoyed working with them as a producer, and I also enjoyed watching them when I didn't produce their matches. I would always make sure that if I could leave early from the building when I was with WWE producing, if I could leave early from the building, I would make sure that I would stay and watch the Usos before I left because they were just that good.
Yes, they are. They most definitely are. Well, I want to bring something up real fast, and then we'll move past the ECW stuff. Again, I live in Dayton, Ohio. Dayton, Ohio is where the Heatwave 1999 incident happened. And by the chuckle on your face, you know exactly what I'm about to bring up. If you haven't, go on Peacock. Stop this interview right now. Go on Peacock. Find the spot where the Dudleys do an interview before their match. Heatwave 1999. It was at Hara Arena, which unfortunately is no longer around anymore. I was so sad when they tore that building down because there's so much history. Nirvana played there. It's like you couldn't find one person to buy it anyway. It doesn't matter here or there. So really, the antagonist is mostly Bubba, but you're there kind of as the hype man in the background, and I won't repeat for obvious reasons some of the things that were talked about. But when stuff like the heat wave incident happened, what are you thinking as he's going around to the ring and pointing at certain people and saying what he's saying? What is going through your mind? Are you loving it, or especially when it got that heated? Was it a point in your head where you were like, "Oh shit, we just crossed the line"?
I think thinking that, oh shit, we crossed the line. I think that was one of the things that might have entered. Um, at the time, I was young and was looking for a fight. So anybody that jumped that railing, it was going to be their ass, and we're going to hand it to them. And that's the thing that I loved about it even more is that was what we wanted. That was what we had in mind when we did incite those riots. So I would do my little stuff in the beginning, but I never wanted to really push it to that level because I didn't know how far we could go. But of course, that night we went probably as far as we could possibly go, and it was brutal verbally. With me starting off with saying sit down and shut the f up and all of that, it was very brutal. Bubba saying that the mother in the front row was gonna teach her daughter how to suck. You know, a black penis. I'm using those words politically correct because of the show. You know,
Right.
or how some woman in the front row was going to take 9 inches of, you know, you fill in the words. If you don't know what I'm saying when I say that, type it in and you'll see.
Right. And to be clear, I don't care about the language. It's just the YouTube flags. I don't want them. But yeah, it got pretty extreme, for lack of a better word. And I actually went back and watched it about a couple weeks ago, and I showed my wife, and she's actually sitting because she has no idea. She's only watches wrestling because me, and she tolerates it. But I mean, she's a fan. Don't get me wrong, but she has no sense of history, and she's sitting here watching it. And after you're doing your thing, and she's like, what's the big deal?" And then Bubba gets the microphone, and she goes, "Oh, that was too far. Oh, that was too far." I'm like, see, that's exactly why we're talking about this and watching this right now. But
Yeah.
it is cool for me, regardless if there were some line stepping. It was cool for me because it's like, man, that's my hometown. And it's something that we can always go back and talk about, even if it was a little edgy at the time. But also, coincidentally, the first time I saw you guys was, I remember the main event clearly. The first time I saw you and Bubba live was in a main event against The Rock and Kurt Angle. It was September 27th, 2001, actually, at the Nutter Center, Dayton, Ohio. Like I said, and I remember that match clearly, and I think that's actually kind of one of the reasons why. And I understand, greatest ever subjective, right? For me, I believe you guys are the greatest because of my own personal memories, this being one of them. The first time I ever went to an actual SmackDown taping was that show and main event. Dudley's versus Rock and Kurt Angle. But I wanted to ask you, when you work matches that with teams that are just kind of put together like that one in particular, where you guys had to square up against Rock and Kurt, is it more challenging to put together a match when you have, you're up against two guys who normally aren't a team, or is it kind of just, hey, they're professionals, it makes it work, or am I completely off base in general?
You're professional, regardless if you're in a tag team or singles. You know how it works. You know the dynamic of
Hmm.
it. You take two great superstars like The Rock and Kurt Angle, you put them together, and now all of a sudden you got even more magic because you got two of the biggest stars in the company put together as one. And when you're doing stuff in the ring, going over matches and going over the match and things like that, you can make magic really, really happen. And that's exactly what happened that night.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Now again, this was September 27th of 2001, and I think I was in 10th grade at the time, so I remember that entire era very clearly because obviously a couple weeks beforehand was September 11th. How was how was touring around that time? Was it a lot of fear of what could possibly happen? Because I think a lot of people forget shortly after September 11th, there was pretty much nothing really going on. I know WWE was the first organization that actually held a public event afterwards. Were you guys kind of like timid, like, oh shit, or was it kind of like, we're going to do this no matter what? They're not stopping us.
Well, we didn't, you got to understand, there was a time when nobody really knew what was going on. We knew planes had crashed into the World Trade Center. We knew a plane went down in PA. We knew a plane hit the Pentagon, but we really didn't know, um, what was really going on. We just knew that something was really bad, and you know, um, a lot of people were scared to go anywhere because we didn't know where the terrorists were coming from. And at the time, it was sad because Arab Americans, there was a lot of prejudice against them because when you saw them especially in an airport or anything like that, people thought about 9/11, and it made people scared. It made people nervous. There were people walking off the planes. If an Arab person came on the plane, especially in their full gear and
Right.
their spiritual get up, it was a very trying time back then. Um, and I felt bad, because here it is. Not all Arab Americans are bad people. You have a couple of radicals that went out there and did what they did, and now a whole race of people are being blamed for something that they did.
Right.
And it was just, it was I don't want to use, I don't know if the word ironic, but it was kind of like, it was like bad for a lot of Arabs here in America because of that.
Yeah.
Mosques were being vandalized and burnt down. I mean, it was kind of like in World War II, I think it was, when the Japanese were put in
Yeah.
camps, just because they were Japanese. It was like the same thing. The only thing, and they were taking them not into concentration camps here, but Guantanamo Bay. When that place was open, they were sending them there. There was so much going on. It wasn't as bad during World War II, but they felt a little bit of what the Japanese felt here in America during that time. So it was just a very trying moment. I think people were scared in general getting on planes because, again, we didn't know fully what was going on. The government wasn't going to tell us everything. They were going to tell us
Right.
what we needed to know in order to try to calm the Americans down.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I know a lot of us definitely appreciated that you guys did continue running shows and everything because I remember very clearly at one point, I think it was like 2 or 3 days into it, it was anything on the radio was September 11th. Anything on TV, September 11th. It didn't stop. I mean, I even to this day, I don't even think the pandemic was that bad because at least you could change the channel and you could watch something else. You didn't have to always have that in your face.
There was only one thing worse than that, and that was the presidential election between Biden and Trump. You couldn't turn anywhere, without dealing with all of that. I mean, that was brutal. That was
Yeah.
probably one of the worst tragedies of American history. It was an embarrassment. If you think, I mean, what other
Yeah.
country goes through that?
Yeah.
But again, we're in a time where it's not like I said, it's not like our grandparents' time. And I say our
Yeah.
grandparents, I believe that my parents, my mom was born, in the 50s and 60s. So it was kind of like one of those things where their generation started the ones that rebel and all of that. It was my grandparents that didn't do things like that. So I blame my mother's generation. She started this.
Well, actually, speaking of your parents, in my research, I saw that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, your father was a bishop and your mother was a pastor. Is that correct?
Well, she's still a pastor. My father
Okay.
away in 2003, but right before he passed away, he had became, yes, a bishop. He had pastored over the church in Harlem, New York, Memorial Baptist Church in Harlem. I believe it's off 125th Street or 126, I believe. But again, when my father passed away, she took over the church, but she was a pastor. She got her minister degree and all of that in '87. So, she was a pastor long before, taking over after my dad had passed away in 2003. But she did an excellent job. She's the first African American female to pastor over 500 members in New York. She works uh, with people like the mayor of New York now. I forget his name. She even worked with Cuomo, um, and she also he's kind of like how do I say? He's kind of like my uncle, so to speak. He came to my first wedding, Al Sharpton. So she does a lot of things with all of these political important people, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Did they either one of them in I'm gonna try to think of the right way to say to this. Did they ever come and talk to you about the theme that you kind of gave off? And obviously later you were a reverend. When you were doing any of your wrestling stuff, and like I was alluding to, the testify, did they any of them ever come to you with a like, hey, you probably shouldn't do this, or were they pretty understanding? I know you said your mother didn't really care for your choice of profession until you became a WWF wrestler at the time.
Yeah.
Um, but did they ever have an issue with any of the religiosity being incorporated?
My father was okay. He did tell me one time, he said, "Son, when you're done hooping and hollering in the ring, come down where it really counts." And, I kind of took his word. I was like, all right, fine. And, careers like, was over at the time. And, I was finding myself lost. I was finding myself lost. I had the money, the fame, the fortune. It's a typical story you hear all the time. And there were certain things going on in my life. I was going through a really bad divorce with my second wife, and it was one of those things where I needed something. I was missing something. Things were empty, and I turned to Christ and became saved all over again. And really got down to nitty gritty. I get emotional when I talk about it because I know where I came from and I know where I was heading. And for me to actually give my life back to God, it was a very important time in my life. And then to become a reverend, or what do you want to call it, an ordained minister, that was really touching for me. And I was like, I'm following right in my father's footsteps.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's really cool. Well, a little bit of well, not a little bit, complete sidebar here. One of my favorite eras that I've watched you in was TNA. TNA, and oh man, I'm so glad they're going back to the name TNA. When they announced that, it was like, yes. But TNA for me, I started watching, I think, '06, '07, somewhere in that time frame, and it really revitalized my love for professional wrestling. After the Monday Night Wars were over, I took about a 5 year, 4 or 5 year hiatus. It just didn't, I don't know, something about it. Well, actually, I do know what it is. My dad smartened me up that the industry was a work. And at that point in time, I think I was like 12, and it shattered my life because, I would get into arguments with my sisters. I have two older sisters, and I'd be like, it's real. See, there's blood. And then one day ended up getting in a fight with one of my big sisters, and they blamed it on my love for professional wrestling, even though it had nothing to do with it. And he had to smarten me up and told me that, it was all a work, right? But so I stopped watching, and then along came TNA. I gave it a chance because I saw you guys were on the roster. Kurt Angle was really the first one where I was like, okay, maybe I should really, start paying attention here. And then, man, I became an addict. Like I was watching every Thursday, really up until the point where they moved to Monday nights, and then I don't know, for some reason I started to lose a little bit of my fandom again. But I actually got a chance to see you live in Troy, Ohio, at the Hobart Arena. You were in a three-way tag. I think it was you and Beer Money. When it comes to house shows and stuff like that, do you kind of have a preference of, do you prefer doing house shows over TV tapings, or is it, is it just a completely different monster in general? Because I feel like a lot of talent like working house shows because you have more freedom. Does that sound right?
I like working both. TV gives you that adrenaline that is like no other, but live event allows you to captivate your ability in the ring to really make it great, because there's no time limit. There's no Vince McMahon there. What the hell is he doing in there? You get to actually mold yourself and to actually, work on your craft. You get to go out there and to try things that you wouldn't normally try at TV, but you would try at a live event because guess what? If it failed, nobody else saw it but the people in the arenas. But nowadays, people got cameras, so they'll take it, do this, and the next thing you know, it's out there.
Yeah, for sure. I honestly prefer going to house shows over anything else because, I mean, there's no time limits. There's no, commercial breaks and stuff like that. So if and I'll go to a TV taping if it's at the Nutter Center or something like that. But 9 times out of 10, if I know a house show's coming up, I'm probably going to wait for the house show. It's so much more fun, I feel anyway.
Yeah.
And you get matchups, like I said, you had a 6-man tag with Beer Money. For those who don't know, James Storm and Bobby Roode were Beer Money. If man, that was such a good time to be a fan, absolutely, for sure. Do you have, other than the obvious aces and eights, is there anything else that was like a highlight for you in TNA where it's like, wow, this is one of my favorite moments, other than aces and eights?
Well, the debut of the Dudleys, Team 3D coming in, because we had just left WWE. We had to change the name and start all over again because they supposedly had the rights to it and all of that and yada yada. So that was a turning point in my career where I didn't have the big giant overseeing everything I do,
Yeah.
and it was a way for us to break out on our own, so to speak. Even though we were with a company, it was still a chance that we can go and break out on our own and be us.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Out of all the major promotions that you've wrestled for, do you look at any specific run more favorable than the next? Like, is there a certain program other than the obvious Edge and Christian? Obviously, that's got to be number one, right? Edge, Christian, and the Hardys, like we already talked about. Is there a certain storyline or something that someone would hear you say, "Oh, I love this part," and they go, "Wow, okay, that's cool."
Well, there was two actually. You know, beginning of me and Bubba's partnership together, where I came in trying to get him stop stuttering and all of that stuff, and the dancing, and me hitting him in the back of the head, and beating him and the other brothers up, and then Big Dick coming in to save the day. God rest his soul. That was one. The second one I would have to say was the night me and Bubba came back together at the Survivor Series. That was a magical moment for me that always stands out. That let me know that the crowd really appreciated me, because I felt for a long time that the fans didn't see me in the same light, as whether it be Bubba or anybody else in the company at that time. I just felt, as weird as it might sound, I didn't feel the love I thought I should get. But that night really showed me a lot. The way Madison Square Garden erupted when I came out, and also that's my hometown. You know, I can't begin to tell you how many times I've gone to Madison Square Garden and sat in those chairs and said, "I'm going to be up there one day. I'm going to be the center of attention." And that night, I was the center of attention.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely pop super hard for that. And I think a lot of people is just I didn't dislike the singles runs. I never dislike singles runs when a tag team is split up because it's like you get a fresh view of it. I know, it's not looked on favorably as far as when you guys did split, but hell, we got a championship match between Bubba and Triple H on Raw. I thought what you and Batista did on SmackDown was different. What's wrong with different? You know,
Championship match between Bubba and Triple H, but I beat Triple H on SmackDown.
yeah.
So Bubba may have had a championship match, but didn't win. But I won mine.
One upmanship of it. But yeah, you couldn't get stuff like that if you guys were constantly in a tag team. But it was definitely cool to see when you guys reunited because it's always great to see you guys together.
The great, great thing about it is, and I figured I'd say this now because I'm sure the internet will probably pop at this, but now, I don't wrestle for WWE anymore, nor will I ever see myself ever wrestling for them. So I can say this without uh, having this bite me in the ass. But I can go, Nana the boo boo, I beat you, Triple H. And you can't do nothing about it. In the record books, it says Devon over Triple H. So there. Can't erase that. So, and I couldn't say that when I was active because he'd have me in that ring and beat me in 5 seconds. But now he can't do that because I ain't coming back in that ring. Ain't no sense of me going back, especially to have him beat me. No, 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 no.
Thank you for giving me my first viral clip ever. I appreciate it.
Like, man,
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. In general, I always, whenever I talk to somebody who is in the industry, I always say, thank you for everything you've done for the industry. It is what it is because of your contributions. You put your body on the line for our entertainment. Again, I've watched wrestling since I was a little kid, so a lot of my upbringing, I mean, heck, I collect gigantic titles. That's how important it is to me, right? But when I didn't have anything else in the world, I had wrestling, and you were obviously a big part of it. Thank you so much for everything you've contributed. If there's anything you want to plug, whether it be socials, whatever, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you, my man.
absolutely. Well, I have a wrestling school in Winter Park. It's called Devon Dudley Academy, abbreviated DDA. You can check us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Either one of those major social media plugs. And we are taking in students all year round. It's 3,500 for the year, And if you don't have it all up front, 500 down, 250 a month. So I think that's, relatively a good thing. And we're also open Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. From the first session is from 3 p.m. To 5 p.m., which is the beginners, and the advanced classes from 5:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. So we're doing very, very good with that. I also have a detailing business in West Palm. You can check that out too. It's 3D Auto. I plug that on my personal social media on Instagram, Testify Devon. You can, if you need your car wash, want to look brand new, my people will come and do it. We'll come to you. You don't have to come to us. So, look us up, and if you need us, give us a buzz, and we'll be there for you. And other than that, just testify on my social media.
Awesome. Devon, thank you so much for your time today, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, my man. Take care, and sorry for the glitches in between.